Today's episode number 4, the free online masterclass about everything you need to know about Navel Consciousness. Today's episode I'm dedicating to me, the founder. I'm known as the founder of Navel Consciousness, and the one thing that many people convey to me is how lucky I am, how fortunate I am, that I knew the purpose of my life, I found it, and I became the founder of Navel Consciousness. But do you know that I lost everything as I know it, all the structure of my life, before I found Navel Consciousness in its entirety? You lose something, you find something. The game of life. When a private person like me decides to share my life story on a public platform, you can only imagine that I must have gone through years and mountains of resistance. I've come to a space of childlike vulnerability where I'm sharing the message because the message is worth sharing. Why can't I just give you the Navel Consciousness information without my story? Because my story is important. My story is important because the theme of yearning that runs central to my life story connects me to you. We all have that yearning, that small or big yearning, depending on our fire, depending the fire, how big it's burning inside of us. And this central theme of yearning is what connects me to you and what connects me to Navel Consciousness and you to Navel Consciousness. What is this yearning that we experience? The yearning to know what is the purpose of my life. We all know that there is a greater purpose to life, that we weren't just born to fulfill the societal roles. But all these societal roles that we fulfill, we get lost in them, we get busy with them, and the yearning is growing slowly. And as the yearning grows, at one point of time in life, if we are lucky, there is a knock somewhere that awakens us to the inevitable question, why? You have asked why, I have asked why. My why, what is my why? My why from the age of 5 was, why is there so much suffering? Because from that age and way before that, I had heard that God was merciful, that God was benevolent, that God was all providence, that God was the mightiest. Then if we had an entity like God, why did we have diseases, poverty, lack, violence? These questions, this basic question of why, stung me like a bee stings you constantly. I remember being extremely sad. I remember feeling extremely bad for whatever food I had, shelter I had. And I remember whenever someone asked me what was the purpose of my life or what would I become when I grow up, it is a question that is asked quite often in India to very young kids. It's a different thing that adults don't know, but the adults ask this question. So what did I want to become when I grow up? And the only thing that I could think of was to eliminate poverty, hunger, and violence. Of course, I did not articulate it this well, but you can imagine it. My why, as I grew up, I realized that People don't just suffer because there is something wrong with the system of God, that God is punishing us, but people suffer because something called ego comes in the way, or something called duality comes in the way. And as I grew up, I was wondering, what the hell is this duality? Where is this ego coming from? And why, if our system is so perfect, if there is something called God, if that God is so perfect, then why does that God allow ego to come in and for us to suffer again? All this why burnt inside me like a raging fire. No matter what I went through in my causal roles, no matter who I became, my education, my marriage, my life as a friend, as a person, as a relative, as a teacher, whoever I was in my causal role, this why is what drove me. This why is what burnt inside me. But mind you, my story is not something like I was living a routine life and one fine day I woke up, there was an awakening or something, someone died or some accident took place or something happened, a heartbreak, and that woke me up to this why. And that's when I began to ask, what is the purpose of my life? No, I was born for it. I was born to ask this why, and now I know I was born to receive the answer. How do I know that I was born for it? At the age of 2, I almost died of excessive brain activity. The specialist, the neurologist that checked me, told my parents that my brain activity was that of somebody at least 10 years older than what my physical age was. A minimum of 10 years older. So my brain was not able to take the amount of neural activity that was going on. My body could not take it. I almost died. My parents brought me back. My mother told me that she was crying loudly in the courtyard of the hospital, asking God to give me back to her. My father did whatever he could. He seduced his ascended masters, he warned them, he begged them, but apparently and thankfully I was back from the dead. That wasn't enough. I spent my early childhood being absolutely ill, having really bad migraines, stomach problems, and slowly developing asthma. Terrible asthma. So I spent a lot of time not playing and a lot of time thinking, because all these questions, all these whys used to go on inside my head. And I always wanted to know who's God and what is God and who created God and who created the stars and the sun, and you know the drill. At age 14, I almost died again. I had a near-death experience while I was in the midst of an asthmatic attack. I couldn't breathe anymore. And right at the brink of the collapse, my mother looked at me and said, instead of rushing to the hospital right now to get you breathing, would you like to just step outside this disease on your own? She doesn't know what made her say that, because she's a loving, caring person who took me to the hospital every single time. But because she said it, I closed my eyes. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. But in a second, I was in this expanse where time stood still, ecstasy was the base, and I knew whatever I wanted will be done. In that moment, I decided to be without this disease. It must have been just a minute or two when I closed my eyes. And from near collapse, I opened my eyes, breathing normally, got up, told my mother that I will never have asthma again. And I never did. At age 16, I had my first Satori. Satori is a spiritual awakening. For no reason, I was in ecstasy. For almost 2 weeks, I experienced an unexplicable ecstasy. There was no reason for it. I couldn't explain it. It was just there. It dissipated after 2 weeks, but I had tasted it. And there were many experiences that took place at that point of time. At age 19, I experienced my first energy experience. My first energy initiation was given by Mother Rabia. And soon after, I became a dynamic Reiki teacher. What this initiation did for me was that my yearning and my questions and my search was really wild and wide. Learning Reiki and then being initiated, it brought some system to my wild search. It brought me into a framework, and I really loved that. Especially when I became a teacher. It gave me so many answers. It gave me a system through which I could channelize the energy that was flowing through me to myself and to others. But the one thing that it did not give me was the answer to why. Why do we suffer? Why do we have ego, duality, separation, division? All that which is supposed to be the base of human suffering, human emotions, pain. I did not have the answer. The journey continued, and me as a woman journeyed through many stages. Most women know this. The first stage for many women, including me, was a deeply damaging relationship, a physically, mentally damaging relationship. Consider it a bad karma that really had to get over. And then life got better. I fell in love with a very decent man, married him, had a child with him, and had a satisfactory marriage. You know the typical thing. Quarrels, love, complaining, and honoring. All of it. And then the awakening of the goddess, the third one. The woman in me went through a process of awakening to the divine feminine. The moral conduct, the moral person that I was began to be questioned within me. And I saw it reflecting outside as the divine feminine movement outside in the world increased, and increasingly people asked themselves who the divine feminine is, what the divine feminine is, and women began to wake up to themselves. I was not spared either. I began to wake up to the goddess that I am, and I also began to wake up to the goddess that runs this universe, this existence. While as a woman I was going through this journey, the seeker in me was also going through a journey. And during this period, during this journey in which I also became a mother, the why began to reveal itself upon me. Answers began to just simply shower. Wisdom revealed itself. Information showed up. Messages came. Books came. Evidence just showed up. All of this was getting bombarded. All of this was coming to me. At some point during the day, I would walk like a mad woman in my room at a mad pace because I felt my brain, my head would explode with so many dimensions opening up to me and revealing themselves to me. In those moments, I would call my mother and she would calm me down or say something, or I would have to watch TV for many hours just to calm down. But even then, in those years, it was like parts of this information was coming to me. I could not see the whole picture, and I wondered what it was. I didn't even know that a whole picture was getting downloaded. I didn't know where this was going. I just knew that information was coming. And in those days, because I didn't know eventually there was a bigger picture coming and the whole picture would eventually get downloaded, I started to just give that information out as it came to me. And it was many years later that I realized that the complete picture had to be given, which is now. But at the age 36, the fourth stage took place. The fourth stage of a woman's awakening is breaking free. What happens to people like Meera, Rabia? What happens to Radha? Many mystics. Breaking free. At age 36, hell broke loose. Heaven opened up its gates. Just out of the blue, my father had a stroke, got paralyzed. It turned our lives around. Having a man who was running, driving the previous day, was the life of the family, the house, did so many chores, having him paralyzed just the very next day without any preparation, was one of the greatest tests of our lives. And he is a stubborn person. So he is a very stubborn patient. Dealing him as a healer and as a family member was one of the greatest learning of my life. That's where the breaking free started. All hell broke loose, not only because my father had the stroke and we went through a family crisis, but I went through an existential crisis too. Everything got questioned, everything. And it was as if Kali started to dance in front of me, awakening my awareness and saying, why are you wasting your time? Why aren't you doing what you came to do? The causal being in me used to be really afraid of this question because it meant not being the structure, it meant not being the typical person, not having the same family structure, not having the same systems. So I used to keep avoiding it, but at one point it became so alive. It engulfed me so deeply that something, that structure inside me broke. Whatever in me was trying to keep my causal life together broke. So not only did I have a family crisis, an existential crisis, my marriage dissolved. A normal, satisfactory marriage dissolved. And as if this was not enough, I, out of the blue, found my spiritual partner. A man specially curated for me to complement the awakening of the divine feminine, to serve the divine feminine. This isn't just a romantic meeting. It is a step into the completion of my journey, in stepping up, in becoming complete and full and whole before I opened my mouth and before I spoke to others about wholeness. But in this meeting, everything else dissolved. Slowly, all the structures came down, and I was left with a blank slate to rewrite my life. Navel Consciousness by that time got completely downloaded. It's still work in progress, but it has a spine, a structure that is more than enough, that can be conveyed, that can be shared, that can be learnt by others, and that can be used to create expansion. But this awakening at the age of 36, it didn't just come out of the blue. In the early 2000s, Sufi mystic Mother Rabia gave me the Navel Awakening Initiation. She's the founder of Navel Awakening Initiation. I took one in early 2000, and in the next few months I observed that I had skipped a few lifetimes. Certain emotional dramas just dropped by themselves. A clarity came in. But more importantly, you must understand that Mother Rabia is a mystic. She's not somebody who explains things intellectually. She is someone where you go for experience. She's someone where you go for silence, where you go into an energy womb. So when she gave me the Navel Awakening initiation, and she's also my biological mother, I'm her energy healing student, one of her first students, she made me see what was happening in the Navel Awakening initiation. But what I found out was that once I had left, there was information coming to me about human navel and what the Navel Awakening initiation was about, and what the navel was about, and what were the connections, and it just kept coming. So I went back to her and I asked her, is this what you are experiencing? Because this is what I am experiencing. This is the information that I'm receiving. She said, all I know is that when I give the Navel Awakening initiation, it's like as if I put my finger into the center of a large galaxy. And a golden thread is what connects my finger to the galaxy. I was amazed because I had witnessed a thread, a silver thread. And from there, as the information started to corroborate, as the evidence came up, I found myself receiving this information up until now. That's many, many years, early 2000. My next Navel Awakening initiation was in 2012. The Navel Awakening initiation is a 3-day process. I will give you more details about it in the next episode. I'm dedicating that to Navel Awakening initiation. In these 3 days, I experienced what one can call constipation. I wouldn't call it constipation, but it was as if a rock weighing a ton was stuck in my bowels. I couldn't get it out. I just couldn't. I was sweating, I was praying, I was begging, and I was doing whatever it took, literally. And I couldn't get it out. It came out only on the 4th morning when I had finished the 3 days of the Navel Awakening initiation. And when it came out, whatever it was, it felt like as if a ton, a mountain had just lifted off me. In the months that followed, I saw myself having taken a quantum leap of lifetimes. A quantum leap of lifetimes. And from 2012 until 2018, especially until 2016, it felt like as if I had accelerated my karma. What was going to happen in a few lifetimes happened in just these few years. Good, bad, everything accelerated. I'm only 40 today, but what I feel today is that I have already lived a few hundred lifetimes worth of living. I'm unrecognizable to myself and to others. Mother Rabia's Navel Awakening initiation changed my life, literally. But more than that, it gave me the purpose of my life, because navel consciousness, what is human navel? What is causal consciousness? What role does human navel play in the existence of a human being and the existence of the existence in your life? This is the information that I received, the the wisdom that I received. And Navel Consciousness stemmed from there, from the Navel Awakening initiation. I found the purpose of my life. And here I am, mustering up all the courage that I can to share with you the intricate details of my life, to give you an outline of a quantum life, and to tell you that I found the purpose, and the purpose was to introduce the wisdom of the human navel to this life cycle, to this time cycle. A huge, monumental task. I did not feel ready for it for a very long time, until life shook me, universe peeled off everything, every excuse that I had up my sleeve, made me stand in front of the universal mirror and said, now you do what you came to do. In this process, I had to become shameless, step up, show up, and share. This is my life story, an overview of my life story. And I hope that it has connected us deeply, that you have found a connection with me, that you have understood that what connects you and me is the yearning, the burning, the search, the seeking, and the answers. Yet again, thank you very much for all the messages that you send me, all the sharings, all the encouragement, all the love that you send my way, and all the enthusiasm that you are showing towards wanting to participate in Navel Consciousness workshops, sessions. The workshops are coming up soon. I don't like to do any haphazard work. I like to do fulfilled whole work. So the workshops are coming up soon. Thank you very much for listening to me, for receiving me. That which is ecstatic is abundant. That which is abundant is always healthy. I'm sending you a big wave of ecstasy, abundance, health.